Welcome to The Explainer. We're here to break down the big, complex forces shaping our world. And today, we're diving headfirst into the new, high-stakes economic war brewing between the US and China.
Okay, let's set the scene. The date is October 10th, 2025. And this number, $1.65 trillion, that's how much value just vanished from global markets in a single day. I mean, that's a brutal, staggering loss that sent shockwaves through literally every corner of the economy.
But here's the thing, this wasn't just some random market crash. Nope, it was a tremor, a sign of a massive geopolitical collision. Think of it as the latest battle in a conflict that's completely reshaping the 21st century. So the big question is, how on earth did we get here? All right, let's dive in and figure it out.
First up, we've got to understand why this whole thing is so different from the trade spats we're used to seeing. This is not your grandfather's trade war. We're way beyond just arguing about tariffs or trade deficits now.
To really get what's happening, we actually need to look back. Way back. There's this ancient Greek historian, Thucydides, who came up with a concept that just perfectly frames the US-China rivalry. It's called the Thucydides trap. And what it tells us is that this isn't some simple trade dispute. It's a historic and sometimes almost unavoidable struggle for who's going to be number one.
So in this classic setup, you've got the US playing the role of Sparta, the established reigning power. And then you have China as the ambitious challenger, Athens. But here's the crucial difference. Unlike Athens and Sparta, this fight isn't happening with ships and soldiers. Oh no, today's battlefield is a digital industrial duel, a fight for control over the world's technology and supply chains. Okay, so what does this new kind of battlefield actually look like? Let's break down the specific economic weapons each side is bringing to the fight. Because make no mistake, while the weapons are economic, the strategy, that's pure warfare.
And you can see the escalation here. It's a clear tit for tat. The US slaps these huge tariffs on Chinese EVs and chips. What does China do? It strikes right back at American soybeans and cars. Then, the US bans the export of its most advanced AI chips. So China retaliates by choking off the supply of the raw materials you need to even make those chips in the first place.
But what's really fascinating about all this is the strategy behind it. It's almost symmetrical. The US is weaponizing what it does best, the top of the tech stack. We're talking high-end chip designs, sophisticated software, the algorithms that run the world. And China? It responds by weaponizing its control over the very foundation of technology, the physical building blocks, the atoms. And that brings us to China's ace in the hole. See, China processes something like 90% of the world's rare earth elements. That gives it a near monopoly on these incredibly messy, difficult to process, but absolutely essential minerals that, power all modern technology. And just to be clear, we're not just talking about what's in your smartphone. These rare earths are critical for everything. Electric vehicles, wind turbines, sure, but also our most advanced defense systems. We're talking F-35 fighter jets, missile guidance systems. So this isn't just some economic threat. It's a direct challenge to national security. All right, let's talk about the collateral damage. Because this economic war isn't happening in a vacuum. It actually threatens to pop one of the biggest, frothiest investment bubbles in modern history. Get a load of this number. $368 billion. That is the staggering amount of money that was poured into the AI industry in 2025 alone. It's just a massive, massive bet on the future, and it's fueled almost entirely by hype and venture capital. But here's the catch. There's this huge gap between all that investment and the actual revenue coming in. A lot of the spending is purely speculative. It's created what analysts are calling AI froth. Basically, a bubble built on these sky-high expectations and promises of future profits, not on what's actually working today. And you know what? The numbers on the ground totally back this up. A study from MIT Sloan found that a staggering 95% of corporate AI pilot projects, they fail to deliver any measurable gains in productivity. Let that sink in. 95%. So here's the bottom line. This whole speculative AI boom, it completely depends on a physical supply chain for chips and hardware. So if China's restrictions on those rare earths, the atoms, suddenly halt the production of the very hardware that AI's algorithms need to run on, that could be the pin that pops this massive bubble. But wait, there's a fascinating twist in this whole story, an unexpected wild card.
there's a legal challenge brewing right here in the United States that could honestly change everything.
This legal battle really boils down to one key constitutional question. Does the president have the power to wage a unilateral trade war on this scale, using emergency powers, without getting a green light from Congress? Lower courts have already weighed in and said no, which is setting the stage for a massive Supreme Court showdown.
And depending on how the court rules, we're looking at two completely different futures. Scenario A, the tariffs are struck down. We could see some relief from inflation and a shift to more targeted, surgical trade tools. But in scenario B, if the tariffs are upheld, well, we're probably looking at a much faster economic decoupling and a world that's splitting into two rival economic blocs.
And a ruling from a federal circuit court really gets to the whole issue. It said, and I'm quoting here, emergency powers are not a substitute for Congress. I mean, that just perfectly highlights the fundamental constitutional question here, right? It's all about the balance of power when it comes to waging economic warfare.
But here's the thing. No matter what the court decides, one thing is crystal clear. The world is not going back to the way it was. This fundamental rivalry, it's here to stay.
What we're seeing right now is the birth of two totally separate, competing digital ecosystems. On one side, you have the Western cloud, built around US tech from companies we all know, like Google and NVIDIA. And on the other side, you've got the Eastern grid, led by Chinese giants like Huawei and Alibaba. And these two worlds, they're going to operate on different standards, use different chips, and have completely different rules for how they handle data. So, if there's one key takeaway from all of this, it's this. The era of easy, seamless globalization, it's over. We've now entered the age of strategic fragmentation. And that means businesses, investors, and even entire countries have to learn how to operate in a world that's defined by division, not by unity.
And that leaves us with a really tough question, one that's going to define the next decade. In a world that's split by competing technologies and rival supply chains, will you be forced to choose a side? Because in this new Cold War of algorithms versus atoms, being neutral might not be an option anymore. Thanks for joining us.